I really want people to know, how did Chaz get to this point?
Yeah.
How did Be The Change YYC get created? Because your story is amazing in itself.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want people to know what made Chaz open up this amazing and do these amazing initiatives. But what made Chaz want to serve?
What made me want to serve? That's a great question. And so I guess I'll start with sort of my history. So I grew up in a fairly tumultuous home life. Children's Services was often involved. Today I have a great relationship with my parents, and things have changed a lot. My parents were very young. And throughout that tumultuous home life, I ended up living with my grandparents. My parents separated. I kind of bounced back and forth. And my first time at an emergency shelter was when I was about 14 or 15 years old. The police, they came, they picked me up from an abusive situation that took place. And they dropped me off at Exit, which was a homeless shelter for youth at the time. I did, of course, go back to try and stay with my family, and soon enough I ended up, kind of being thrown out and walking the streets without a jacket, and it was cold and I didn't know what to do. I remember calling my grandma that day, and she just said, go home. And as a person where I was at, I didn't feel safe doing that, and so I called the police. I didn't know what else to do. The police picked me up. They went in, they grabbed my jacket and my clothes, and they brought me to Avenue 15 Youth Shelter, which still runs today through Trellis. And that is sort of my experience of homelessness, which is not uncommon to many youth that end up in children's services, which of course I did as well. And I lived on the streets. When I couldn't access shelters, I would sleep in parkades. When the police came and removed me from the heated parkades, we would walk around with blankets around us just to keep warm overnight. The unfortunate part was I got into substance use to self-medicate for my mental health. The anxiety and depression that I had from my childhood trauma started to really manifest. And I remember my first time smoking a cigarette. I would have been about 15. It quickly changed to cannabis, and I moved into something called MDMA or ecstasy. And at the time, that was mostly like meth or tech, as we would call it on the streets. And that is how I stayed alive. It was often a substance that we would use at night so that we could keep walking the streets and have energy to stay warm, because when it's cold, you can't stop. Safety in numbers with your friends. And so it was my environment really encouraged that, and that also exacerbated my mental health. The choices that I made as a young person were not always healthy. I didn't have healthy community. I didn't have healthy structure. And I never had an outreach team ever walk up to me where I was at on the streets and say, hey, are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Are you interested in this resource? Are you interested in that program? That was not something that ever happened. But on my journey, I met amazing people that helped support me. And ultimately, I ended up in housing when I was 18. Through Trellis, the Infinity Project that still runs today, does amazing work. I was their very first client in the Infinity Project as a housed youth. They gave me a therapist. And ultimately, I just stopped using substances because I had the structures. I had community. I had people that cared about me and went out of their way to care about me when they didn't need to. That taught me to care about myself again. That taught me to love myself. And that environment that promoted the mental health and the substance use, it disappeared. And with that, so did that substance use.